The Stellar Dreams wasn't supposed to drift helplessly in space. The luxury cruise liner, pride of the galactic tourist fleet, had been designed to be unsinkable, or whatever the space equivalent of that word was. Yet here it floated, its engines dead, and its worried passengers gathering in the grand observation deck, their alien features illuminated by the strange purple glow of the Obsidian Veil Nebula. First Officer Bloom stood at the command console, their crystalline form reflecting the emergency lights that pulsed overhead. The situation was bad, really bad. Their captain, the only human on the command crew, had taken medical leave just 2 days before, leaving Bloom in charge of what should have been a routine pleasure cruise through well-mapped space. Status report, Bloom demanded, their voice creating ripples in the ship's translator field. Main engine core is completely offline, reported Engineer Trill, their insectoid mandibles clicking with anxiety. The backup systems are not responding either. Something in this region is interfering with our quantum drive's basic functions. Bloom moved to the observation window, their crystalline legs making soft chiming sounds against the deck. Outside, chunks of strange dark debris drifted past the ship. The Obsidian Veil wasn't supposed to be dangerous, just a pretty backdrop for tourist photos. But now these unknown fragments of space rock and ancient ship remains had turned their intended route into a deadly maze. What about the distress calls? Bloom asked, turning to Communications Officer Pulse, a being made primarily of light and contained within a specialized environmental suit. We've received responses from 3 rescue services, Pulse flickered. The Better Tomorrow Rescue Corps tried to reach us first. Their ships couldn't navigate the debris field. Their AI systems got confused by some kind of interference. The Golden Path Emergency Service attempted next, but their ship shields were damaged by the debris. The Stellar Salvation Force's attempt just failed 10 minutes ago. The news sent a wave of worried murmurs through the bridge crew. These were the best rescue services in the galaxy, equipped with the most advanced ships and AI systems available. If they couldn't reach the Stellar Dreams. In the passenger lounge below, things weren't much better. The ship carried 300 passengers from 20 different species, most from worlds with gravity so light that Earth would crush them instantly. They had paid small fortunes for a luxury cruise through the scenic parts of the galaxy. Instead, they were getting a lesson in how quickly space travel could go wrong. The air processors are still working, Engineer Trill reported, and life support is stable, but we're drifting deeper into the debris field. Each impact weakens our hull slightly. We need help within the next 48 hours, or... The engineer didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew what would happen if the hull's integrity failed. Bloom moved back to the captain's chair, technically their chair now, and began reviewing their options. The standard rescue services had failed. Their automated systems, usually so reliable, were worse than useless in this strange region of space. They needed something different. Something. A memory surfaced in Bloom's mind. 3 months ago, Captain Reed had told a story during one of their shared meals. A story about Earth's deep-sea rescue teams and how their experience in crushing pressures and dark waters had made them invaluable in certain space rescue operations. At the time, Bloom had politely listened while privately thinking how primitive it sounded. Why use human divers when you had robots and Now, staring at the swirling debris outside and thinking about all the failed rescue attempts, those primitive methods didn't sound so bad. Officer Pulse, Bloom said slowly, can you still get a signal out through the interference? Yes, sir. Basic communications are still possible, though degraded. Good. Bloom straightened up, their crystalline form catching the emergency lights. Connect me to Earth's Space Rescue Division. The bridge crew stared at their first officer in shock, calling humans Deathworlders to rescue their advanced ship. Sir, Pulse flickered uncertainly. Are you sure? Their ships are. Well, they're not very advanced. Bloom looked out at the debris field again, watching as another chunk of ancient wreckage scraped against their failing shields. No, they said firmly. "They're not advanced. They're exactly what we need." The passenger lounge erupted in chaos when First Officer Bloom announced their plan to contact Earth's Space Rescue Division. The room, with its luxury viewing windows and elegant refreshment stations, became a storm of angry voices and worried whispers. "Humans? You want to trust our lives to humans?" A tall, willowy passenger named Greenleaf stood up, their leaf-like skin rustling with agitation. "Their ships are made of metal. Simple metal. Not even proper quantum crystalline alloys." Bloom stood calmly at the center of the lounge, their crystalline form steady despite the growing unrest. "All 3 standard rescue services have failed. The debris field is too unpredictable for their AI systems. We need different methods." "Different doesn't mean primitive," argued Trademaster Ring, a wealthy merchant whose circular body floated in a personal gravity field. "I've seen human ships. They still use manual controls. Manual, like something from the Dark Ages." At the communication station, Officer Pulse was already sending their distress call to Earth. The signal traveled through the interference, carrying their desperate message to a planet most of the passengers had only heard about in scary stories. The response came faster than anyone expected. "This is Earth's Space Rescue Division." A calm human voice crackled through the translator field. "We received your distress call. What's your situation?" Even through the translator, the human's voice sounded rough and deep to the alien crew. Bloom quickly explained their problem. The engine failure, the dangerous debris field, the failed rescue attempts. "Send us your coordinates," the human replied. "We're dispatching rescue specialist Jack Stone. Estimated arrival time: 6 hours. 6 hours. Engineer Trill's antennae twitched in surprise. But the nearest rescue service took 12 hours just to reach the edge of the debris field. "Yeah, well, we're taking the shortcut," the human answered. There was a pause. Then, "Fair warning, it'll be a bit bumpy." The connection ended, leaving the lounge in stunned silence. Bloom turned to address the worried passengers and crew. "I know this isn't the normal way," they said, "but I served with Captain Reed for 3 years. He once told me about Earth's rescue teams. They don't rely on AI like we do. They use something called gut instinct and hands-on experience." "That's exactly what worries us," Greenleaf muttered. "Instinct. Experience? Where's the scientific logic in that?" The next 6 hours passed slowly. Engineer Trill reported 2 more impacts from the debris field, each one weakening their shields further. The ship's power reserves were dropping, and the artificial gravity began to fluctuate in the lower decks. Then Officer Pulse's console lit up with a new signal. "Incoming transmission," they announced. It's very basic, almost primitive." "Put it through," Bloom ordered. "This is Rescue Specialist Stone." A new human voice came through, rougher than the first. "I can see your ship. You've got some nasty debris around you. Looks like an old shipping lane graveyard. We've got similar things in Earth's oceans. Going to start my approach now." Through the lounge windows, the passengers could finally see the human rescue ship. Many gasped in horror. It wasn't the sleek, elegant vessel they had expected. Instead, it was bulky, covered in thick armor plates, with manual gripping claws, and what looked like primitive rocket thrusters. "That's not a proper rescue ship," Trademaster Ring exclaimed. "It looks like a deep-sea rescue vessel," Bloom finished quietly. "Because that's exactly what it is, modified for space." The human ship moved closer, its movements different from any ship they had seen before. While their own vessels moved with eye-calculated precision, this one moved like a living thing, adjusting constantly, flowing around the debris instead of trying to calculate paths through it. "Beginning approach," Stone's voice came through again. "Remember what we say on Earth. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Hang tight, folks. Help is here." Looking at that sturdy human ship getting closer, moving with surprising grace through the dangerous debris field, Even the most skeptical passengers felt something they hadn't expected: hope. The docking procedure was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Stone's rescue ship didn't use standard automated docking protocols. It couldn't, with all the interference. Instead, they watched in amazement as the human manually guided his vessel through the debris field, using what looked like old-style thrusters and mechanical grips. Requesting permission to dock, Stone's voice crackled through the comm system. "Your main docking port looks damaged. I'll use the emergency airlock on level 3. First Officer Bloom hurried to the emergency airlock with Engineer Trill and 2 security officers. None of them had ever met a human in person before. They all knew humans came from a high-gravity death world, but knowing facts was different from meeting one. The airlock cycled, and Jack Stone stepped through. The aliens couldn't help but step back. Stone was tall by their standards, wearing what looked like a heavily modified spacesuit. Unlike their sleek environmental suits, this one was bulky, with reinforced joints and various tools attached to it. The helmet retracted, revealing the weather-worn human face with alert eyes and a neatly trimmed beard. "Nice ship you got here," Stone said, looking around while removing his gloves. Or at least it was nice before the debris field got to it. "I'm Jack Stone, Earth Space Rescue Division." Engineer Trill's antennae twitched nervously. "You're shipped." "It's so old school." Stone grinned, pulling out what looked like a simple tablet computer. "Yeah, we found out pretty quick that too much automation doesn't work well in situations like this. Sometimes you need to feel your way through." He walked over to a wall panel, his heavy boots making solid thuds on the deck plating. The aliens noticed how easily he moved, despite the ship's fluctuating artificial gravity. Where they had to concentrate to stay steady, he seemed to adjust automatically. "Your engine problem isn't just bad luck," Stone said, studying his tablet. "This whole region is full of wreckage from the old trading routes. Creates weird energy fields that mess with modern quantum drives. We see it on Earth too, in places like the Bermuda Triangle." "The what?" Bloom asked. "Old shipping hazard back on Earth. Ships and planes would go missing there. Turned out to be natural phenomena messing with instruments." Stone tapped something on his tablet. "Same principle here. Your fancy engines don't like it, but my old-style fusion drive works just fine." A loud crash echoed through the ship as another piece of debris struck the hull. The aliens stumbled, but Stone barely seemed to notice. "First things first," he said, pulling tools from his suit's various pockets. "We need to stabilize your hull before we try moving. I've got some patch foam that'll help. Works great under pressure. We use it for deep-sea repairs back home." "Deep sea?" Trill clicked their mandibles in confusion. "You repair ships under your planet's oceans?" "Sure do. Water pressure at those depths is worse than space, believe it or not. Great training for space rescue work." Stone started walking toward the damaged section, then stopped and turned. "Oh, and you might want to warn your passengers. The artificial gravity is about to fail completely." "How do you know that?" Bloom asked. "Experience. I can hear your gravity generators straining. They've got about 10 minutes left, tops." As if on cue, the deck beneath them shuddered. Warning lights began flashing across the nearby control panels. "Gravity systems critical," Trill announced, their voices rising in panic. "We're losing power to the generators." "Don't worry," Stone said calmly, already pulling what looked like magnetic attachments from his suit. "I brought enough gear for everyone. Used to train astronauts back home. Trust me, floating around is easier than you think once you get the hang of it." He handed out the magnetic grips to the aliens, showing them how to attach them to their suits. His movements were quick and sure, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. "Right then," he said, checking his tablet one last time. "Let's go save your ship. Just remember, in 0G, slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Follow my lead, and we'll have you all safe and sound in no time." The aliens exchanged glances. This human, with his primitive tools and old-fashioned methods, was their last hope. As the artificial gravity began to fade, they realized they had no choice but to trust him. The moment the artificial gravity failed completely, chaos erupted throughout the stellar dreams. Passengers who had never experienced zero gravity before began floating helplessly, bumping into walls and each other. Their panicked cries echoed through the corridors. Stone, however, moved through the weightless environment like he was born to it. He pushed off walls with just the right amount of force, grabbed handholds at exactly the right moments, and never once lost his orientation. First rule of zero-G, he called out to the floating aliens around him, is don't fight it. Work with it. Think of yourself as swimming, but in air instead of water. First Officer Bloom tried to copy Stone's movements but ended up spinning slowly in place. This is impossible. How do you make it look so easy? Practice, Stone answered, catching Bloom with one hand and steadying them. Lots and lots of practice. Now we've got bigger problems than floating passengers. He pulled up a ship diagram on his tablet, which now floated beside him attached to a simple cord. That last debris hit did more damage than we thought. You've got a crack forming in the outer hull near the cargo bay. We need to seal it before it gets worse. Engineer Trill, who had managed to anchor themselves to a wall using their magnetic grips, clicked their mandibles nervously. But the repair drones can't function without gravity. They're not designed for this. Then we do it the old-fashioned way, Stone said, already pulling repair equipment from his suit's many pockets. By hand. The aliens watched in amazement as Stone quickly organized them into teams. He gave each person a specific job, teaching them how to move in zero-G while they worked. His voice remained calm and steady, even when another piece of debris scraped against the ship's hull with a screech that made everyone else flinch. Bloom, you're with me, Stone said, pushing off toward the cargo bay. Trill, monitor the hull integrity from the engineering station. The rest of you, help the passengers stay calm and keep them in the central areas of the ship. As they made their way through the corridors, Bloom noticed something strange. While most of the ship's advanced systems were failing or giving incorrect readings, Stone's primitive equipment worked perfectly. His magnetic boots, manual tools, and simple tablet computer all functioned without any problems. How is your equipment still working? Bloom asked as they reached the cargo bay door. Stone smiled while attaching a safety line to his suit. Sometimes simpler is better. Most of this gear was designed for underwater use first. No fancy quantum circuits or AI systems to get confused by the interference. Just good old-fashioned electronics and mechanical parts. The cargo bay was dark when they entered, illuminated only by emergency lights and the purple glow from outside. Through the reinforced windows, they could see the debris field swirling past. Each piece of space rock and ancient wreckage seemed to move in unpredictable patterns. There's the crack, Stone said, pointing to a section of the hull where a dark line was slowly spreading. We need to patch it before it gets any bigger. He pulled out what looked like a large tube of thick paste and several metal plates. This is the same stuff we use to patch underwater oil pipelines. Works in space too. The pressure difference actually helps it set faster. As they worked, Stone kept talking, explaining each step. His movements were precise and confident, even as more debris impacted the ship around them. When Bloom started to drift away from their work area, Stone caught them without even looking, as if he had a sixth sense for movement in zero gravity. Almost done, Stone said, applying the last layer of patch foam. This will hold for now, but we need to get your ship out of this debris field soon. The hull can't take much more punishment. Suddenly, a massive piece of debris appeared in the window, heading straight for their section of the ship. Stone's eyes widened slightly, the first sign of worry they'd seen from him. Well, he said calmly, already reaching for his tablet, looks like we're about to test this patch job sooner than I thought. Hang on tight, First Officer Bloom. Things are about to get interesting. The massive chunk of debris, nearly the size of a small shuttle, spun toward the cargo bay like a giant throwing star. In the few seconds before impact, Stone's training kicked in. He grabbed Bloom and kicked off hard from the wall, pushing them both toward the cargo bay door. "Trill," Stone shouted into his communicator. "Seal all bulkheads in Section C. Now." The impact hit just as they cleared the doorway. The entire ship shuddered, and the sound of tearing metal echoed through the corridors. Warning lights flashed everywhere as emergency systems activated. "Hull breach in Cargo Bay 3. Trill's panicked voice came through the comm. "We're losing atmosphere." "No, we're not," Stone said calmly, pulling what looked like a large folded sheet from his back. "Everybody hold on to something solid. This is going to get rough." He kicked off again, moving back toward the cargo bay. The emergency doors had sealed, but Stone quickly accessed the manual override, another primitive system that still worked. As the door slid open, the rush of escaping air tried to pull everything out into space. Stone was ready. He braced himself in the doorway, using his magnetic boots, and threw the folded sheet into the cargo bay. It unfurled like a sail, revealing itself to be some kind of emergency patch fabric. "Automatic seal patches would be shredded by debris like this," Stone explained, working quickly to secure the edges. "This is based on old naval damage control techniques. The pressure difference actually helps seal it tighter." The makeshift patch held, slowing the air loss. Stone pulled out his repair foam again, quickly sealing the edges of the fabric to create an airtight seal. "How did you know that would work?" Bloom asked, their crystalline form vibrating with leftover adrenaline. "Used something similar when a whale hit a deep-sea research station I was working in," Stone replied, checking his tablet. "Pressure's stabilizing. But we've got bigger problems. That impact knocked us deeper into the debris field." Through the windows, they could see they were now surrounded by even more wreckage. Pieces of ancient ships and strange rock formations created a maze around them. The purple glow of the nebula made everything look even more otherworldly. "Bridge systems are failing," Officer Pulse reported through the comm. "Navigation is completely offline." "Good thing we don't need it," Stone said, already moving toward the bridge. "First Officer Bloom, I need you to gather all passengers in the central lounge. It's the most protected part of the ship." "What are you going to do?" Bloom asked, following Stone's graceful zero-G movements as best they could. "I'm going to pilot us out of here. Manually." The bridge was in chaos when they arrived. Most of the automated systems were dark, and the few that still worked showed confusing readings. The bridge crew floated helplessly, trying to make sense of their failed technology. Stone took one look at the scene and went straight to the manual control station, a backup system that hadn't been used in years. He pulled a worn leather glove from his pocket and put it on. "This is like that time I had to navigate a submarine through an underwater canyon during a storm," he said, grabbing the control stick. "Except this time, the rocks are moving too." "You can't be serious," Trademaster Ring said from where he floated near the ceiling. "You're going to fly through this debris field without computer assistance. It's impossible." "Impossible." Stone grinned, his eyes focused on the swirling debris outside. "I'll tell you what's impossible. Trying to calculate a perfect path through chaos. Sometimes you need to feel your way through." He reached up and switched off the last of the automated systems, leaving only the basic power and life support running. The bridge went eerily quiet except for the creaking of the hull. "Now," Stone said, his hand steady on the controls, "let me show you how we did things back in the old days. Everyone hang on tight. This is going to be one heck of a ride." Stone's hands moved across the manual controls with practiced ease. The Stellar Dreams responded sluggishly at first, like a whale trying to dance, but then began to move more smoothly as Stone got a feel for her. "Your ship's not so different from the deep-sea vessels I used to pilot," he said, eyes never leaving the debris field ahead. "It's all about understanding the currents." "Currents." In space, Engineer Trill clicked their mandibles in confusion. "Watch," Stone said, pointing through the main viewport. "See how the debris moves. There are patterns, Energy flows from the nebula create paths, just like ocean currents on Earth. The bridge crew watched in amazement as Stone guided the massive cruise ship through gaps they hadn't even noticed. He didn't use the standard navigation systems or AI predictive paths. Instead, he seemed to read the movement of the debris itself, anticipating where spaces would open up. "There's our way out," Stone said, nodding toward what looked like an impossibly small gap between two massive chunks of ancient wreckage. "That's our ticket home. That opening is barely bigger than the ship." First Officer Bloom protested. "Even if we could fit, the debris movement would crush us. Not if we time it right." Stone pulled something from his pocket, an old pocket watch on a chain. "My grandfather's. He used it to time the waves when he was a sea captain. Sometimes the old ways still work best." He watched the debris movement, clicking the watch several times, then nodded. "The pattern repeats every 78 seconds. We'll have exactly 12 seconds to make it through." 12 seconds. Trademaster Ring's circular body pulsed with anxiety. "That's not enough time." "It is if you know what you're doing." Stone's voice was calm but firm. "Everyone, secure yourselves. This next part is going to be tricky." He waited, watching his pocket watch, then suddenly pushed the ship's engines to full power. The Stellar Dreams surged forward, heading straight for the gap. The debris seemed to close in around them, making horrible scraping sounds against the hull. For a moment, it looked like they wouldn't make it. The gap started to close just as they were halfway through. Several passengers screamed. Even Bloom closed their crystalline eyes. But Stone made tiny adjustments to their course, threading the massive ship through the narrowing space like a needle through fabric. When they emerged on the other side, the entire ship erupted in cheers. "Don't celebrate yet," Stone warned, still focused on his piloting. "We're not done. My rescue ship is waiting just ahead. We need to transfer your passengers." "Transfer?" Bloom asked. "But your ship is so small." Stone smiled. "Take a closer look." As they cleared the last of the debris field, they saw Stone's rescue ship wasn't alone. 5 more Earth vessels waited nearby, each one looking just as sturdy and practical as Stone's. "Called for backup while I was patching your hull," Stone explained. "These ships aren't pretty, but they're tough. Each one can carry 100 passengers safely." The next hour was a careful dance of rescue operations. Stone supervised as his fellow human rescuers helped transfer passengers using simple but effective tools: magnetic tether lines, manual winches, and basic pressure suits that worked perfectly despite the nebula's interference. "I don't understand," Bloom said, watching the rescue. "Your technology is so simple, yet it works better here than our advanced systems." "Simple doesn't mean primitive," Stone replied, helping a group of elderly aliens into a rescue vessel. "It means reliable. Sometimes the fanciest solution isn't the best one. That's something we learned the hard way on Earth." As the last passengers were transferred, Stone did one final check of the Stellar Dreams. The luxury cruise liner was battered but still intact, thanks to his quick repairs. "We'll tow her to the nearest station," he said, patting the ship's wall. "She's tough, like something from the old ocean liners back home. Just needed someone who understood her language." Looking back at the dangerous debris field they'd escaped, Bloom finally understood. Sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones, and sometimes you needed a human to show you why. 2 weeks later, First Officer Bloom stood in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Rescue Service's headquarters. The room was packed with representatives from various alien species, all gathered to hear about the now famous rescue of the Stellar Dreams. Stone stood at the podium, looking uncomfortable in a formal uniform instead of his usual rescue gear. He seemed much smaller without all his equipment, but the aliens in the room looked at him with new respect. "The rescue was nothing special," Stone said, his voice carrying through the translator field. "We just did what we've been doing on Earth for centuries, adapting old solutions to new problems." The head of the Galactic Rescue Services, a being of pure energy contained in an elegant floating sphere, moved forward. But that's exactly why we've called this meeting. Your old solutions worked when our most advanced technology failed. We want to understand why. Stone pulled out his grandfather's pocket watch, holding it up for everyone to see. This watch helped save 300 lives, he said. Not because it's special, but because it's simple. It can't be confused by energy fields or debris interference. Just like our rescue ships, they're not pretty, but they work. Images appeared on the large screens behind him. Earth's ships and rescue equipment next to the more advanced alien versions. The contrast was striking. Look at deep-sea rescue operations on Earth, Stone continued, pointing to videos of underwater rescue missions. The pressure at those depths is incredible. The darkness is complete. Equipment fails. Communications break down. Sound familiar? The alien representatives murmured among themselves. The similarities to their space rescue problems were obvious. That's why Earth's Space Rescue Division recruits from our ocean rescue teams, Stone explained. Space isn't so different from the deep sea. Both are dangerous. Both are unforgiving. Both require you to trust your equipment and your training. First Officer Bloom floated forward. I can testify to this. When our ship was in danger, Stone used what we thought were primitive methods. But those methods saved us. He read the debris field like ocean currents. He used manual controls when our AI failed. He applied deep-sea repair techniques to our hull breach. Trademaster Ring, who had been one of the loudest critics during the rescue, spoke up from the audience. I thought humans were just dangerous Deathworlders, they admitted. But now I understand. You're dangerous because you had to be. Your planet's oceans taught you lessons we never had to learn. The head of Galactic Rescue Services raised their glowing form, which is why we're announcing a new initiative today. Earth's Space Rescue Division will help train our rescue teams. We'll establish joint rescue stations throughout the galaxy, combining our advanced technology with Earth's practical experience. The announcement caused excitement throughout the hall. Stone smiled, finally putting his pocket watch away. There's an old saying on Earth, he said. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Space may be the final frontier, but the basic principles of rescue work haven't changed since humans first went to sea. Keep it simple, be prepared, trust your training, and never underestimate the value of experience. After the ceremony, Bloom found Stone preparing to return to his rescue ship. You're not staying for the celebration, they asked. Stone shook his head, already changing back into his familiar rescue gear. Got another call. Ship in trouble near the Horsehead Nebula. Apparently, they heard about what happened with the Stellar Dreams and specifically requested a human rescue team. Humans, Bloom said, their crystalline form reflecting the light, always rushing into danger to help others. Maybe that's why your primitive methods work so well. You never forgot the most important rescue tool of all, the human element. Stone grinned, checking his equipment one last time. Nothing primitive about caring, he said. Just ask anyone who's ever been lost in the dark. As his rescue ship departed, aliens throughout the galaxy were already beginning to understand. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways, and sometimes you needed a Deathworlder to show you why.